Chapter 51 The Female President Wants to See Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hold up a sec, Ling frowned, carefully considering how to best allocate this attribute point. He was a different person now. He used to be just a broke fisherman, and even after getting the system, his focus was still on making money, but now things were different. Money was still important, but not the most important thing. He'd already learned from the system that trading in 10 energy units would trigger an upgrade, unlocking a major reward. And that reward? The system had been clear: domain domination. By dominating a specific field, his cultivation level would increase accordingly. This wasn't about physical abilities like strength or agility, this was about realm. With realm came mana, and if he dominated enough fields, he could even become immortal. He would be immortal like the sun and the moon. The universe might crumble, but he would endure. This was the ultimate goal. Compared to achieving immortality, what was money, really? He'd earn money to find and buy energy crystals, hand them over to the system, and hustle to get those 10 energy units ASAP to level up the system. His broadened horizons came with a complete shift in mindset. The old Ling was gone, so, whether it was Tian Meiji or Zhang Chuanxia, they were like ants to him now. It was a state of mind, a strong, focused mentality. After debating for a while, he decided to aim for balanced growth, turning his 4 attributes into a well-rounded powerhouse. With that thought, he smiled slightly and headed towards the bookstore. It was a long road ahead, one step at a time. The priority right now was getting into Donghua University. Ideally, he'd ace the college entrance exam, which would be like dominating a field in itself. He'd spent the whole morning reading at the bookstore and was about to grab some lunch when his phone rang. It was his dad. Huh. The female CEO wants to meet me. Yang Jianjun's voice was buzzing with excitement on the other end of the line. I never thought the old man and the Liu family had arranged a marriage. You need to look presentable. Be there at 2 o'clock sharp. After hanging up, Ling managed a wry smile. What had started as a joke was now a reality. The Liu family was the real deal. The old man of the Liu family used to be a top dog in Beijing. He'd retired to Jiangnan province, but the old man could still shake things up. The old man had a son who had a son in politics, who was a big shot in some province now. The second son was in the army and was the youngest, most promising general in the Jiangnan military region. That son had a son in business but unfortunately passed away young, leaving behind a capable daughter. Lu Muhan, CEO of the Muhua Group, controlled $4 billion in assets and stocks. Plus, the family had connections that were off the charts. Compared to this CEO, Tian Meiji didn't even register. Who knew the system would set him up with this heiress? Any guy hoping to marry this CEO would have big shots lining up to battle from all over. What a storm he was about to walk into. And he'd heard Lu Mu was ice cold and had zero interest in men. With a wife like that, wouldn't he basically be a widow? But there were upsides. He could tap into the Liu family's vast network to find energy crystals, and he could get help from them down the road when he wanted to break into different industries. Thinking about it, Ling looked up at the sky. After a long pause, a small smile crept onto his face. At 2 o'clock, he arrived at the coffee shop right on time. It was the most upscale coffee house in S-City, frequented by the city's elite. Chapter 52 You're late, let's get a divorce. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The waitress gave the plainly dressed guy in front of her a surprised look. Though she couldn't quite hide the disdain in her eyes, she asked politely, "Do you have an appointment, sir?" Ling smiled. "Someone should. Is Lu Muhan expecting me? Where is she sitting?" Lu Dong. Dong is a title, meaning director or CEO. The waitress did a double take, then said quickly, "Are you Mr. Yang? The one meeting with Director Lu?" "Yes, that's me." "Oh, right this way." Now knowing Ling was expected, the waitress suddenly became very helpful. She led him to a secluded corner where 5 people sat around a table. An older man, dressed casually but radiating the aura of someone who'd been in charge for a long time, sat at the head of the table, smiling at him. A man and a woman sat on either side of him. The man, maybe 26, wore a suit and had a handsome face, but his eyes held a coldness and a hint of hostility. the woman wore a light black dress, her long hair flowing freely. She was stunningly beautiful. This was Lu Muhan. Young Ling thought he'd seen plenty of beautiful women, but his ex-girlfriend, the nurses he knew, even the hot anchors online, paled in comparison to this beauty. Only Su Qiuxia, the policewoman, came close. However, the beauty was giving him a pretty unfriendly look, and the pretty girl next to her just looked at Yang Ling with contempt, her eyes practically screaming, "You're not good enough for Lu Muhan." That the waitress quietly disappeared, and Lu Muhan spoke first. "Not Mr. Lu," she gave a short, sharp sound, "you're late. I hate people who are late. This is grounds for divorce." The first thing she said was about a divorce. Nice opening, Yang Ling blinked, glancing at the clock. 2:01 p.m. He was actually a minute late, he smiled. "Director Lu, we aren't even married yet. How can we get a divorce? If you don't want to be here, leave." Everyone was stunned, saying that in front of Mr. Lu. Was this guy clueless, or just plain stupid? The young man smirked, and Lu Muhan's pretty friend snickered. She'd seen this kind of showboating before. Lu Muhan just glanced at Yang Ling. "Fine. I'm out of here." She started to get up, but Mr. Lu frowned. "Sit down." She bit back a retort, shooting Yang Ling an angry look. After a moment of hesitation, she finally sat down. Mr. Lu chuckled. "Xiao Yang, my granddaughter has a bit of a temper. Sorry about that. Anyway, how about we introduce ourselves?" Yang Ling smiled. "Mr. Lu, you're too kind. It's not like I don't know who you all are. You've dedicated your life to our country. Everyone respects you." Then, looking at Lu Muhan, he added, "Director Lu is always on TV. She's a well-known young entrepreneur and the most beautiful woman in Jiangnan province. Who doesn't know her?" Lu Muhan just stared at Yang Ling, saying nothing. Chapter 53. The marriage certificate is ready. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yang Ling, unfazed, turned to the young man next to Mr. Lu. "You must be Wang Chao, the VP from Muhua Group, right?" Wang Chao gave a curt nod, his eyes filled with disdain and hostility. His grandfather and father had been close confidants of Mr. Lu, and now he was the VP. He was also one of Lu Muhan's many suitors, and because of his family connections, rumors swirled that he had a real shot. Seeing Yang Ling, Wang Chao just sneered, figuring it didn't matter who he was. He best not mess with him. Then, his gaze shifted to the girl beside Lu Muhan. She was beautiful in her own right, a total knockout on her own, but she paled in comparison to Lu Muhan. He offered a thin smile. "If I'm not mistaken, this young lady must be Lin Xiaoshuang, the daughter of the Yushuan Group's chairman." Lin Xiaoshuang scoffed. As a lifelong friend of Lu Muhan and practically family, she was blunt. "Yang Ling, we've already checked you out. I don't want to make things awkward in front of Mr. Lu, but you and Muhan are a total non-starter. Take my advice and move on." Yang Ling smiled. "I've heard of you, but that doesn't mean I know you. Putting aside whether you have the right to advise me, even if you did, do you think I'd give a damn? You?" Lin Xiaoshuang was speechless, glaring at Yang Ling, trying to come up with a snappy comeback. Lu Muhan frowned. She knew her best friend's fiery temper. Once she got going, things could get ugly. She subtly squeezed Lin Xiaoshuang's leg under the table, signaling her to chill. Lin Xiaoshuang huffed and turned away from Yang Ling. The atmosphere was tense from the get-go, but Mr. Lu nodded slightly. He'd seen plenty of young men interested in Lu Muhan, but they were always respectful in front of him, bending over backwards. They'd also trip over themselves trying to get on Lin Xiaoshuang's good side. He had agreed to let Lin Xiaoshuang come today partly to size up Yang Ling's character. So far, Yang Ling's demeanor was neither humble nor silent. He fired back without hesitation. Besides, Mr. Lu sensed that the young man didn't care about any of their social standings, even detecting a hint of disdain and pride in his eyes. For a kid from an ordinary background to have that kind of attitude was surprising and intriguing. Where did this kid get his confidence? Mr. Lu chuckled and said, "All right, let's not bicker. Xiao Ling, you must know about this marriage with Muhan, right? You're mistaken about something. I've already made the decision for you and renewed the marriage. He nodded to Wang Chao, who grimly pulled a red booklet from his briefcase and handed it to Yang Ling without a word. It was a marriage certificate with his and Lu Muhan's names on it, dated today, complete with photos. It looked totally legit. Chapter 54 The First Mission of the System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay, so this whole thing shows you just how much pull the Lu family has. Bottom line, they can make this marriage happen, paperwork and all. Whoa. Yang Ling gave a wry smile. Grandpa Lu, aren't we rushing things a bit? Mr. Lu chuckled. Your grandfather and I made this arrangement years ago, a lifelong promise. Besides, he added, I'm not worried about my granddaughter not wanting you. Lu Muhan's face darkened. She was a grown woman, never even had a boyfriend, and now she was being forced into marriage. Of course she was furious. She glared at Yang Ling, the root of all her problems, wishing she could divorce him on the spot and ship the jerk off to some faraway land, never to be seen again. Feeling the female CEO's death stare, Yang Ling rubbed his nose, a little uneasy. He was technically the other victim in this arranged marriage, but let's be real, he kinda brought this on himself. Just then, the system chimed in, ding. Detected that Lu Muhan, a system-related individual, has a negative opinion of you. Initiating system task number 1. Within 10 days, reverse her attitude and cultivate a positive view of you. Reward, 1 unlimited wish meeting. Failure results in skill deduction. Current intimacy level between Lu Muhan and you, -0. Mission objective, intimacy level must exceed 50. Yang Ling was stunned. He hadn't expected the system to drop a task, let alone one involving a system-related individual. It had to be the previous unlimited wish. The system must have scanned things and identified Lu Muhan as the best candidate, hence the connection, but seriously, -0 intimacy. Was that even possible? Was he already in the hate zone? System, what about my charisma? Why isn't it working? Ding. Detected that Lu Muhan's charisma value exceeds yours. Your charisma has no effect on her. Well, that explained it. This woman was gorgeous, competent, and rich. Her charisma was off the charts, and Mr. Lu had that whole leader vibe going on, and the other two weren't exactly lacking in charm. No wonder they had this natural pull on people. For the first time, he wasn't hating the idea of having charisma. Seeing Yang Ling's silence, the old man thought he was worried about the marriage. He chuckled, don't sweat it, kid. After you marry Muhan, you'll be working at Muhua Group. As for your folks and your sister, I'll take care of them, too. You can count on it. And I'll have someone handle the wedding photos, the ceremony, even set you up with a place. Just, put in some effort yourself. Yang Ling just managed another smile. Lu Muhan looked like she was about to explode. If Grandpa wasn't the person she respected most in the world, she'd have stormed out already. Lin Xiaoshuang kept smirking, and Wang Chao was shooting daggers at Yang Ling. Safe to say, the VP already loathed him. The old man was either oblivious or playing dumb, wanting Yang Ling to navigate this mess himself. The more he talked, the more hyped he got. He was even brainstorming baby names, figuring out what they'd do, drive Yang Ling up a wall. He was itching to bolt. After what felt like an eternity, the old man chuckled. I need to hit the restroom. You young folks get to know each other better. And with that, he got up, no entourage needed, and strolled off, whistling a happy tune. The second he left, the atmosphere turned ice cold. Chapter 55 I'm the one you can't offend. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wang Chao, who had been holding back for a while, finally sneered, Yang Ling, I've done my homework on you. You're a lousy student from a dirt-poor family with 0 skills. Heard you tangled with some gangsters recently. A guy like you couldn't even dream of marrying Muhan. Hell, we wouldn't even let you scrub the toilets at our company. I'm not going to beat around the bush. $1 million, and I'll convince the old man to let you divorce her, no questions asked. Lu Muhan winced, feeling that Wang Chao's words were a bit harsh. She wanted to say something, but held back. Yang Ling just stared at Wang Chao with a calm expression. "And what if I don't want to?" he asked coolly. "Think that's not enough money?" Lin Xiaoshuang jumped in, sneering. "How much do you want? Name your price." Seeing that Yang Ling's expression remained unchanged, she got even more irritated. Softening her tone slightly, she continued, "Yang Ling, let's be real about your background. We've checked you out. You used to be a good student with a wimpy personality. You're practically spineless. They say a toad wants to eat swan meat. That's giving you too much credit. Mu Han is a phoenix, and you're an ant. People need to know their place. Don't you get it?" Yang Ling's expression darkened. He shot back, "Maybe it's too early to say who's the ant and who's the phoenix. If it wasn't for respecting the old man, you two would be carried out of here on stretchers." "You." Lin Xiaoshuang's face flushed. Wang Chao chimed in, "Yang Ling, we're nobodies, but what are you?" "What am I?" Yang Ling said softly, "I'm someone you can't afford to mess with. I'm warning you one last time, if you keep buzzing around my ear, you'll regret it." As he said this, a subtle aura emanated from Yang Ling. The disdain in the young man's eyes was as if a celestial dragon were looking down on ants. Even Lu Muhan was taken aback, having seen plenty of important people with her grandfather since childhood. This look seemed familiar, yet different, but her temper flared. She wasn't convinced. She suddenly stood up and exclaimed, "Enough. What are you trying to prove by saying these things? It's not that I think you don't have enough money, or that you're not capable enough. It's that I don't think you're man enough. What happiness can a man give me when he can't even protect his own girlfriend?" Those words were brutal, hitting Yang Ling right where it hurt. He fell silent. Fang Yue had been taken away. Even though he beat Tianzhuyan, he still lost his girlfriend. It was a failure, plain and simple. And he had resolved to regain his lost dignity one day. But right now, he couldn't prove anything. Seeing him silent, with a bitter smile playing on his lips, Lu Muhan realized she had gone too far. Her expression softened, and she sighed softly, "Let's just get divorced. We're not a good fit." Yang Ling let out a breath, looked at the cold but beautiful woman in front of him, and smiled lightly. "You guys managed to get a marriage certificate. I assume getting a divorce certificate shouldn't be too hard, right? Whether we get a divorce or not is up to you, Mr. Lu. Just so you know, I hope you don't regret it later." Lu Muhan said calmly, "I never regret anything." Just as she was about to continue, Wang Chao's phone rang. He quickly got up, saying, "I'll go check on the old man," and hurried to the restroom. Interrupted like that, the two of them calmed down, but no one spoke for a moment, creating an awkward silence. Annoyed, Yang Ling calmly sipped his coffee, saying nothing. After a while, Old Man Lu and Wang Chao returned. The old man chuckled and said, "Xiao Ling, I heard you took down a robber single-handedly. I even watched the video. You're a real hero." Yang Ling smiled and said, "Just luck, sir. You're too kind." Mr. Lu became even happier upon hearing those words, making it clear that he was very pleased with his grandson-in-law. Chapter 56 Kidnapping, an Emergency. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hold on a sec. Wang Chao's voice cut through the air. He answered his phone, and his face went white. "No. Ma'am. Mrs. Xiao's been kidnapped." "What?" The room erupted in shock. Ma'am referred to Lu Muhan's mother, Xia Fian. Lu Muhan's face hardened. She reached for her phone to call her mother, but Wang Chao said, his voice shaking, "Chairman, the kidnappers, they hit her." The color drained from Lu Muhan's face. She was a powerful woman, a real female president, but still a young woman in her early 20s. The old man, Mr. Lu, said grimly, "Give me the phone." A moment later, Mr. Lu slammed the phone down, his jaw tight. That someone would pull this kind of stunt in this day and age. Wang Chao, call the cops, get these criminals brought to justice. Wang Chao's smile was strained. Sir, they were very clear. No police, or they'll tear her up. What do we do? Lu Muhan, frantic, pleaded, Grandpa, if they want money, give it to them. We can't risk Mom's safety. Mr. Lu fell silent, the years seeming to weigh on him. Finally, he said, they want us to stay at the coffee shop, not leave. Muhan, get the cash together. They want 100 million. Have it sent here. Wang Chao, quietly secure the coffee shop, don't attract attention. Both nodded quickly. Mr. Lu sank into his chair, a grimace on his face. He looked at Yang Ling and the visibly shaken Lin Xiaoshuang. I'm sorry, the kidnappers are worried you'll go to the police once you leave, so you need to stay here too. Sorry for the scare. I'll make it up to you later. Lin Xiaoshuang, beyond composure, nodded rapidly, her eyes wide with fear. Yang Ling, however, remained calm, though a glint flickered deep in his eyes. The Lu family definitely had connections. Within 2 hours, a Mercedes van, packed with cash, was parked outside the coffee shop. Just then, the kidnappers called again, ordering everyone to step 10 meters away from the van. The Lu family complied. A beat-up van pulled up. A figure in black, wearing a pig mask, jumped out, hurried to the Mercedes van, and started it up. But instead of speeding off, he waited. Mr. Lu's phone rang. The kidnappers had changed their demands. In addition to the 100 million, they now wanted 100,000 shares of Muhua Group. And here's the kicker, someone had to follow the money-filled Mercedes in that beat-up van to the place where the contract was signed. Furthermore, no fancy cars were allowed, it had to be the van. This was clearly designed to humiliate the Lu family. Mr. Lu was furious. How dare these lowlifes be so arrogant to him? Under normal circumstances, a single phone call would have been enough to bring these kidnappers down. But they had the Lu family over a barrel. He had no choice but to play along. He glanced at the younger people behind him, shaking his head slightly. He used to be a company commander in a transportation unit way back when, in the Korean War. When it came to driving skills, none of these young people could hold a candle to him, but his old bones. Never mind. The old man, Lu Baichuan, sighed softly. Muhan, Wang Chao, you two come with me in the van. Yang Ling, Lin Xiaoshuang, you're safe here. You two should go home. Chapter 57 The Speeding Van. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lu Muhan's eyes welled up. Grandpa, your old injury. Let me handle it. The old man insisted. This isn't something a young woman should do. But. He cut her off with a shake of his head. No arguments. Get in the car. She reluctantly obeyed with a sigh. Yang Ling turned to Wang Chao. You can't drive. Wang Chao shook his head. Not as well as Muhan. I wouldn't want to slow things down. Right. Yang Ling gave a knowing smile, then glanced at the pale Lin Xiaoshuang. Head home. He strode to the driver's side, hopped in before the old man could react, and said calmly, I'll drive. You will? Everyone looked surprised. Wang Chao scoffed. From what I hear, you don't even have a license. You sure you can handle this? I'm betting you'll crash within the first few blocks. Lu Muhan's eyebrows furrowed. Yang Ling, knock it off. Get out of the way. Mr. Lu sighed. Xiao Ling, I appreciate the thought, but this isn't a game. Go on home. This doesn't concern you. Yang Ling smiled. I haven't resigned from the police force yet. Since I'm here, I'd say it does concern me. That gave them pause. They remembered he was the guy who single-handedly caught those serial robbers. His calm expression, that faint smile. It was strangely reassuring. After a moment of silence, Mr. Lu nodded. All right, son. I trust you. Let's go. He hopped into the passenger seat. Lu Muhan followed, getting into the van without a word. Seeing Wang Chao hesitating, Ling asked. "Mr. Wang, you coming?" Wang Chao replied seriously, "The old man always says not to put all your eggs in one basket. I'll follow in my own car, keep a safe distance." Mr. Lu nodded. "Don't get too close. Xiao Ling, let's get moving." Yang Ling's lips twitched. Then, the system notification popped into his head. Ding. Driving proficiency initiated. He gripped the wheel, slammed the gearshift, and popped the clutch. With a roar, the van shot forward like a rocket. 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds to get the van into top gear. Whoa, the old man gasped, his eyes wide. He'd seen skilled drivers, but nobody could get a beat-up van up to full speed in 10 seconds flat. Lu Muhan in the back seat didn't know all the technical stuff, but she had a license. She was just as impressed. The van was tearing down the road at 60 miles an hour. Passers-by gaped. "Dude, is that a minivan?" "Mommy, I think that beat-up van is flying." "Honey, is that Schumacher behind the wheel?" Everyone was amazed, even the traffic cops were dumbfounded. That stretch of road always had its share of violations, but speeding at 50% over the limit? That was a first. Chapter 58, Mount Tai collapsed in front of him without changing his face. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside the car, Lu Muhan's jaw dropped. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. "When we get back, heads are going to roll. Whoever investigated Yang Ling is fired. He doesn't have a driver's license. With skills like that, he could get a license for anything, even a Formula One car." The old man's eyes were glued to Yang Ling's driving. He seemed to have completely forgotten his daughter-in-law had been kidnapped. The average person just sees the flashy stuff, but someone who knows their stuff can see the real skill. Yang Ling wasn't just driving smoothly, it was pure magic. He was weaving through traffic like a hummingbird, making moves that seemed impossible. In all his years, he'd never seen anyone drive like that. Ding! You've satisfied the old man's desire to witness the art of driving. Wish value +1. Current progress, April 10th. Even though he'd gained another wish point, Yang Ling just gave a wry smile. The old man asked, "Xiao Ling, what's wrong?" Yang Ling sighed, "The brakes on this junker are shot." What? The old man and Lu Muhan both went pale. They were going 110, and with no brakes. Well, that pretty much said it all. Lu Muhan's face drained of color. The old man, having been through tough times before, frowned and asked, "Could the kidnappers have messed with the car?" Yang Ling nodded silently. Anyone with half a brain would figure that out. "The robbers want to cause a wreck and kill us all." Lu Muhan took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. She asked, "Yang Ling, can you stop the car?" "Stop?" Yang Ling smiled slightly. "Stopping now would be a waste of time. Just hang on tight." He slammed the accelerator to the floor. The van's engine screamed as it shot forward even faster. With the brakes gone, the little van was running like a desperate soldier. Lu Muhan couldn't watch. She closed her eyes, putting her life in the young man's hands, but Mr. Lu was stunned. Facing such a crisis, at such a terrifying moment, the young man beside him just smiled faintly, his eyes full of calm confidence. In that instant, he finally understood what it meant to be unshakable in the face of disaster. Who is this kid? They barreled along at top speed. 5 minutes later, the van left Xinqiang district, and the traffic thinned out. Yang Ling could clearly see the Mercedes-Benz van up ahead. He didn't spot Wang Chao's car in the rearview mirror, though. Frowning slightly, he seemed to realize something, and a smirk played on his lips. Feeling the car lurch, Lu Muhan instinctively opened her eyes and sighed in relief at the scene in front of her. Mr. Lu also exhaled. "Xiao Ling, the car ahead is slowing down. Let's try to shift gears and slow down ourselves." Yang Ling gave a bitter smile. "The gearbox is broken too. The shifter's just for show now." This. Mr. Lu smiled wryly. Even the gearbox was busted. Stopping the car was going to be a real challenge. Lu Muhan stared at Yang Ling. "Can you slow us down?" If you can get us safely to the drop-off point, I promise to go on a date with you afterward. A date? Yang Ling glanced back at her. President Liu, aren't you getting a divorce? Better to avoid it. I wouldn't want to give you, the big boss, the short end of the stick. Chapter 59, The God of Cars. Marvelous. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What? Lu Muhan's face paled, then flushed slightly. Bringing up how she looked down on Yang Ling before felt awkward now, but she knew if it weren't for him, if she or her grandfather had been driving, they'd be dead in a wreck. She'd seen Yang Ling's skills on the road, and he was the only one she could count on now. Lu Muhan wasn't dumb, she was sharp. She might make grand promises to others, but Yang Ling's attitude earlier and the abilities he'd shown suggested money wouldn't sway him, and her biggest asset wasn't her title as a female president, but her looks. That's why she offered him a date. In her mind, no man could refuse a date with her, but Yang Ling refused outright, even mocking her a little. Tons of guys wanted to date her, and this kid turned her down. It ticked her off, but she couldn't lash out, and she felt a strange feeling inside. Yang Ling didn't care what the female president was thinking. His eyes flashed, and he yanked the steering wheel. The van spun in place, trying to slow down using the ground friction. And it worked. Totally awesome. Cars and pedestrians nearby gasped. He's a driving god, a real wheelman. People started filming to post the incredible scene online. After a bit, the van's speed dropped to 60 miles per hour, and it followed the Mercedes van. Mr. Liu was still reeling. He'd never seen anything like Yang Ling's driving. He could win any rally race easily, plus, the kid could fight, kept a cool head, and stayed calm and confident. He decided right then to tie Yang Ling to his granddaughter. A grandson-in-law like that was worth way more than those other guys. 15 minutes later, at the top of a remote, winding mountain road, the Mercedes stopped. A lone villa stood there. Yang Ling noticed a huge shape covered in tarps in the open space behind the villa, but he couldn't see what it was. The Mercedes stopped, but the van was moving too fast to stop. Stopping safely seemed impossible to everyone else, but not to Yang Ling. The van crashed into a building under construction nearby, and something incredible happened. After one spin, two steel bars sticking out from the concrete wall went right into the gaps in the wheels. The wheels bent under the force, locking in place, and the van stopped instantly. Unbelievable. Boom! With a thud, Yang Ling kicked the car door off and stepped out first, while Old Man Liu and Lu Muhan shook their dizzy heads and slowly climbed out. The old man was pretty tough, he was just a bit lightheaded. Ding! You fulfilled Lu Muhan and Mr. Liu's wish to get off the bus safely. Wish value +1. Current progress, May 10th. Ding! You crushed the robber's wish to kill you in a car accident. Attribute point +1. The robbers from the Mercedes in front jumped out, gave Yang Ling a thumbs up, and then beckoned them to come inside the villa. Chapter 60. Yang Ling, Take Revenge, Never Overnight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hold up a sec. Seeing this, Mr. Liu, with Lu Muhan's help, slowly made his way towards the villa. As he passed Yang Ling, he said, "Xiao Ling, you did good. The rest is between me and Muhan. You can wait outside." Yang Ling was quiet for a moment. He'd already saved their lives. He wouldn't feel bad about turning back now. It wasn't his business anymore. Besides, what Lu Muhan had said earlier was infuriating. He glanced at Mr. Liu, still looking pale, and at Lu Muhan, who was clearly anxious, though she didn't say it. The longing in her eyes was obvious. Even she was scared in this situation, and she wished for a man she could depend on. Yang Ling sighed deeply, then suddenly smiled faintly. Those thugs almost killed me. When someone messes with me, Yang Ling, I settle the score right away. With that, he stepped forward. Mr. Liu smiled, grateful, while Lu Muhan stared blankly at the man's back. She'd said such awful things to him, breaking his heart, yet in a crisis, he still stood up for her. A wave of guilt washed over her, followed by a sense of security that filled her heart. Ding! You have fulfilled Lu Muhan and Mr. Lu's wishes for your company. Wish value +1. Current progress, June 10th. Asterisk boom, star, with a loud thud, Yang Ling kicked the villa door open. He burst into the villa and was immediately surprised by what he saw. In the empty hall, a beautiful woman in expensive clothes had her mouth gagged, strange wires were attached to her, leading to a piano, surrounding her, for her 5 masked men in black had their guns trained on Yang Ling. Mom, that seeing her mother like that, Lu Muhan cried out and started to rush forward, but Yang Ling pulled her back. The beautiful woman shook her head frantically, signaling her daughter to stay away. Mr. Lu walked in slowly, glanced at his daughter-in-law, and said sternly, "Where's the guy who wanted to sign the contract? Show yourself." Clap, clap, clap. Applause came from the second floor. A young man in a monkey mask walked down, laughing. "As expected of Mr. Lu, you're so calm. But before we sign, I've got another condition," that the man's voice was distorted by a voice changer, making it hoarse. He pointed at Lu Muhan and said, "Dong Lu, I've admired you from afar for a long time. If you're willing to spend one night with me, I guarantee your Lu family will walk away from here safe and sound. How does that sound?" "You wish," Mr. Lu shouted angrily, "if you lay a hand on my granddaughter-in-law, I'll make sure you never leave S City." "Ha ha ha," the man laughed. "Old man, we're all just a bunch of lowlifes, but you're different. If you push me, I'm willing to die alongside you all." "You," Mr. Lu was so angry he could barely stand. The man sneered. "So, Lu Dong, have you thought it over? If you don't agree, not only will you die, but your mother will be fried to a crisp by high voltage. You wouldn't want to see that, would you?" Lu Muhan's face was pale. She was grinding her teeth, but she looked at Mrs. Lu and Yang Ling beside her, and at her mother, who was already crying, and said, "I." "Hold on," before she could finish, a faint voice interrupted.